So lock up your daughters when the daughters are in town because we do vocation work. Okay. So I'm really, really excited to be here. The sister of one of our sisters is here. I'm sorry, what is your name?
Susie.
What's your name?
Susie.
Susie.
Yes.
And actually, her first cousin married my first cousin, and we didn't find out for 8 years. So now we're related. Okay. So glad to see you all here. This is parenting in a culture of confusion. We did ministering in a culture of confusion earlier. So that was with a lot of pastoral ministers from the diocese, some of the youth ministers, Catholic school teachers, etc. Just need to get combobulated here. So let's begin with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and kindle in us the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and ye shall be created, and ye shall renew the face of the earth. Amen. St. John Paul II, apostle of the human person, witness to hope, and servant of Jesus and Mary. Pray. And we ask him to pray in a special way for that we understand theology of the body. And also, we really want it to spread. Because, you know that joke that priests like to say about the guy who was drowning in a flood, and he prayed to God to save him. God sent him a rowboat. God sent him a canoe.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, no, God's going to save me. And he sends them all away. He drowns. He gets to heaven. And can you hear that?
Oh.
Wow, that's loud. I'll do my best. I have amazing powers of concentration because I work with youth. So I will just keep talking. So the helicopter is theology of the body, and the pilot is John Paul II. God has given us this incredible gift for our times. Now, if you would like the PowerPoint that I'm going to be presenting, as well as handouts that I'm going to be giving you, you will get them all digitally. You can pass them around. They're not copyrighted. I'm going to give you lots of resources, lots of videos, things that you can instruct yourself with for free, and then pass on to others as well. So just text your email address, not your phone number, your email address. No other words. It's a texting service, just your email address. I'll put it up again. And you have to do it within 24 hours or it doesn't work. So we'll take a break, a little 15-minute break after an hour, and then we'll finish up for 45 minutes. How many would like to have sort of an open Q&A session? Did you come with questions? Did you all come with questions? And you're like hoping I'm going to cover them, and you're like, shoot, if she doesn't cover this, I'm dead. How many people would like that? Like just a kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. Not too many. We'll leave a little time at the end. So I'm so excited to be back in New England. I am from beautiful Boston, beautiful Belmont to be precise. And we spent a lot of time in New Hampshire, though. That was our getaway place, as a lot of Massachusetts people do. In the winter and the summer, we visited, I think, every motel, hotel, inn. We climbed a lot of mountains. For me, New Hampshire is tied with California for natural beauty. I love this state. I also went to Magdalen College. Anyone know Magdalen? It used to be called Magdalen. It was St. Mary Magdalene. Now it's Northeastern College. So I actually knew Dr. John Meehan as well, great holy man who founded it and studied under him as well. So I got a really good foundation in philosophy right here. When it was the Fleabag Motel. Anybody remember the Fleabag Motel in Warner, New Hampshire? He bought this old rundown motel. That's where we slept and studied and everything. Okay. So I can tell you a lot of my fun and funny New Hampshire stories, but that's not why I'm here. I'm from the church. I'm here to help. So why are you here? 5 people answer 1 sentence each. 2 people answer 1 sentence each. Yes, in the back.
I have 5 kids, and I just want to raise them, teaching them theology of the body.
Wonderful. She's going to have TOB kids. She's a TOB mom. All right. Yes.
Well, I have tween and a teen, and I don't know that much about theology of the body. I know some. The world is just so crazy right now, and there's so much going on with the gender fluidity, and my daughters are just so confused by all of this. So
Right.
I just need to have some good answers to help them along the way.
Right. So we were talking earlier today about it being a mess. It's a mess. What's a mess? The church and the world, it's a mess. Right now it's a big mess. But it doesn't have to be, because we have the helicopter. Okay. And it's the answer to a lot of things. It's not only the answer to all of the hot button issues of the day and the confusion, it's the answer to the deepest longings of our heart, which we're going to see. We're going to talk. Anybody here this afternoon? Anybody was at the Puritan Center? Oh, a few people. Okay. So we're going to do some new stuff tonight. It's not just a repeat, okay? So glad you came. We're going to really talk about going to God through desires. And that goes for our young people too, right? We do things to get a feeling. We do things because we have these desires. But if we don't know how to fulfill them or what to do with them, that's when things get a little crazy. But I always blame the church. It's always the church's fault when society is messed up. Because we're supposed to evangelize, right? And when we don't have our act together and evangelize the culture evangelizes the church. Amen?
Yeah.
And that's no good. Not that the culture's all bad. We don't set out to be countercultural. We set out to follow Jesus. And if the culture's doing something different at some point, we know where we stand. We keep following Jesus. Okay. But we're supposed to help the culture. We're supposed to shape the culture, right? By forming people. Okay. So Christopher West, who is Mr. Theology of the Body, he is probably one of the masters of theology of the body. He said, we live in a society where every body has to identify as some body without reference to any body, which makes us a society of no bodies. Get it? So let me go over a few books here. This is the text that JP2 wrote. He started it December 8, 1974, finished it in 1978 when he became Pope. And it's a tough read. Parts of it are easier than others, so I like people to read original sources, but and the introduction is fantastic by Dr. Waldstein, but I recommend flipping around because some parts are easier to understand than others. This is a paraphrase by Christopher West, so if you don't want to attack the original source, I recommend the paraphrase with little anecdotes, and then you know when he's actually quoting the text. John Paul II, before he wrote Theology of the Body, he wrote something called Love and Responsibility, and a lot of people like this even better. It's a much easier read. It came out in English in 1960, and it's really just about what does it mean to be human, and therefore what does human love require of us. It's fantastic. This is the only Spark Notes for Theology of the Body. Men and Women are from Eden by Dr. Mary Healy. So it's skeletal. It's just a synopsis of each chapter with questions and which scriptures John Paul II uses and his main thoughts. This is also one of the smallest books you can get, Theology of the Body Made Simple, and it's just Genesis. Just covers the book of Genesis, but that's enough because it's all there in Genesis. If we lost the whole Bible and just had Genesis chapters 1 through 3, it's all there. Jason Everett has a new little book called Theology of the Body in 1 hour. Also excellent, but it's super condensed, so I actually like to use this as a review. If you already know Theology of the Body and you want a quick summation or review, if you'd like to just read like a very elegant reading book, it's called These Beautiful Bones and Everyday Theology of the Body by Emily Stimson. Like when you're cooking, when you're gardening, how does that relate to theology of the body, everything in your life? And she's a beautiful writer. So if you're a reader and you don't want to just, read facts, hard, cold facts, she's got a beautiful book. And for the Aquinas lover in your life, Aquinas and Theology of the Body. So this is written by a Dominican, and this is good for skeptics, especially sort of rad trad skeptics who are skeptical of theology of the body, and even John Paul II. They thought he was a little too libertine or something. This shows that John Paul II was really a Thomist. He was trained as a classical Thomist, and he really leans on Thomas Aquinas and scholasticism for theology of the body. So this should win anybody over. And last but not least, I have a mini-series that I did for EWTN. So this is called Digital Catholics. My background is radical feminism. And radical feminism laid the groundwork for gender ideology by saying that the body has nothing important to say about who we are. Right? So basically what radical feminists said, and which I bought into for many, many, many years, is there is no significant differences between men and women except for a few reproductive body parts. And we can shut those off permanently if we want to. And so that led to, like, let's ignore the body and just trip out on the spiritual. Because gender is all about the spiritual, supposedly, right? Feelings, right? So let's remember that church teaching is more than church teaching. So I had a young man, smart as a whip, young guy, 12 years old, his name was Adrian, and he came to my talks. It was not for 12-year-olds. Although I have whole families come to my theology of the body stuff, and oftentimes the 8-year-olds are tracking better than the teens and adults because it's so beautiful and simple, and they're so open, right? They have their own relationship with the Lord, and they're just so pure, and they can accept this stuff. So anyway, Adrian came to a whole weekend of a course I was doing in theology of the body with his dad because his best friend was trans, was identifying now as a girl. And he was very upset about that. He wanted to understand. So he learned what the word ideology meant. What does ideology mean? Yeah, something you cook up. Definitely, yes.
Someone who's convinced of a certain idea and no facts will move them from that idea.
Right, so it's an idea that may not be based in fact. Sometimes it will take a truth, a small truth, and then blow it up to be the explanation, the theory of everything, and apply to everything. It's even worse if it's not true. That little piece that they're taking and blowing up to answer and explain everything is not true. Ideologies never just sit there. They are imposed. Because nobody in their right mind would ever sign up. So like communism is an ideology. It's imposed, right? You're not going to have a choice about this. So gender ideology, same thing. It's a globalist movement. We understand this, right? It's a well-heeled, monolithic, cross everything in society. So the laws, the media, the entertainment, the schools, the courts, everything, the hospitals, everything is being geared up according to these talking points of gender ideology, right? And it seems like it just came out of nowhere so fast. Like all of a sudden we woke up one day and everything was trans and LGBTQ+, right? But we're gonna see in a minute, hopefully, a little bit of where it came from. So when Adrian, the 12-year-old, learned the word ideology, he kept visiting me and having chats over the weekend. So he said, isn't the Catholic Church and church teaching just a bunch of ideology? Just another ideology? I said, no, Adrian. I said, it's God. And he got this big smile on his face, because this kid had a lot of faith. And I said, Adrian, people like to dismiss church teaching. Oh, that's just the church's teaching. Oh, it's just the Bible, that ancient thing that needs to be changed, is so out of date. And I said, God is using the church and the Bible to teach us. This is how God communicates to us. And he got it. He understood. So, what is your number one job as parents? Yes.
To get our children to heaven.
Yes, thank you. Yay, Catholic parents. Okay. But sadly, not all Catholic parents can come to that. So I talk at parishes and I say, what's your number one job as parents? Did I say Catholic parents? That was like a clue and a hint. Anyway, if I just say parents, they don't always get it. So they'll say, to keep my child safe, to make sure my child has a good life, to make sure my child's successful, to make sure they can make it on their own, to love my child. All good things, right? And I'm like, anything else? And then they see a nun standing in front of them. Oh, they have to go to church. Church. They have to go to church. And they have to pray. They have to pray a lot. Okay? And I'm like, anything else? And sadly, most Catholic parents can't get to that. Can't get to like heaven. I gotta get my kid to heaven. Of course, it's their choice, not yours. But that's what you're trying to surround them with. I was with some homeschoolers in Virginia. And they came right out, the whole bunch of them came right out with it. Now let me tell you something about heaven. Heaven is their ultimate goal and job as parents. And I'll tell you something, these homeschoolers are having all the same problems everybody else is, okay? They're trying to figure out how much time their kids should spend on devices. I had mothers and wives coming to me saying my husband's using porn, you know? But because they understood the ultimate goal of parenting, I think they have a leg up, right? That they knew this was their ultimate goal. And so what I would say is give yourselves a break, parents. Flip your parenting priorities if you haven't already. All these things are good, right? Play dates, soccer, Chinese lessons, violin lessons, running here and there, orthodontist, getting your shots, all this stuff. But you know what? That's only for this life. Do you ever think about that? It's only for here. So if something is happening with media, if something's happening with theology of the body issues, that's number one. So, and your kids, if they see that that's most important to you, that'll send a message. All the stats are that young people, even teens who look like they're ignoring you and rejecting everything you say and rebelling, they want to know what you value and why. It matters. It matters much more than their peers to them. Even though it doesn't look like that, you still have a tremendous influence. So when I'm talking about media literacy and parenting the media, I say, like, if your kid breaks some rule with media, or you find porn on your kid's laptop or something, you stop everything. They missed soccer practice that day. They need to understand that this is vitally important to their lives, and it's more important than soccer practice. So that sends a message like, whoa, this is like really important. And again, it's not about heavy-handedness, even though we're terrified of the stuff they can get into today. And that's a whole nother workshop, parenting the media. But the importance is communicating, not preaching, communicating. Having open dialogue with your kids about all of this stuff. Okay, so you flip those parenting priorities and you give yourself a break. So you don't have to be super parent, right? And then if there's a choice between parenting for here or parenting for hereafter, you parent for hereafter and let everything else go. Does that make sense? I know easier said than done. These are tough times. These are tough parenting times. We have a strong culture and weak faith. That is a recipe for disaster. Strong culture. It's not a theology of the body culture. Our kids are getting 5 to 6 hours of anti-theology of the body a day on their devices. Okay? I do hit and runs. I go into schools and youth groups and confirmation groups, and I tell them something they have never heard before with theology of the body. And they're looking at me like, okay, lady, either you're nuts, because you're saying something completely different from everyone else, or just maybe you're right, and they're wrong. But our young people, when they hear the truth, they know it. They know it. They know that this is something different, and it's something beautiful, and it's challenging. They may not want to sign up right away, but they can't unhear it. And my thing is, you heard it first in the Catholic Church. We want to tell you everything you need to know for life. What you do with it is your business, not our business, your business. But we didn't fail you. We told you the truth, right? Not like screaming and hammering it into you. Presenting it as this beautiful banquet, right? That you can have. Theology of the body is not about what you can't have, it's about what you can have and how to get it. Or as my cousin's bumper sticker says, get what you want. Okay. you want your kids to be happy? Just for here or for hereafter too? Yeah. So the ancients taught us that happiness is living according to our nature. That happiness is impossible if we're not at least trying to live according to our nature. So what we have happening today is young people fighting their own natures, fighting their own purposes. That's what I was doing as a radical feminist, fighting my nature as a woman. And I'll tell you, it doesn't bring happiness or fulfillment. So a lot of it is not your fault. I don't know what part is your fault. If your kids are having problems or whatever, okay. Nobody's perfect, right? But a lot of it today is not your fault, all right? I just heard Dr. Ray Guarendi speaking. You know, he's a Catholic psychologist, and he's funny as a crutch. He gets funnier with age. Anyway, he said, you know, we psychologists, we shrinks ruined you parents. He said, we took your confidence away. We said, you don't know anything. You don't know what you're doing. You have to listen to us. And then we kept changing. Do this. No, don't do that. And at a certain point, there was this idea of putting the kids in charge because they have the wisdom. The 2-year-old knows. And so people stopped parenting. They were so indecisive, so unsure of themselves, you know. We have to return that confidence to parents. You know what you're doing. You have the graces. They're your kids. You have the grace of the sacrament of matrimony. How do you parent? Nobody taught your parents. You just make it up as you go along. But you have guidelines. You have a plan. And communication is love. So it's easier to just say, shut that off, and not explain why, right? It takes love to stop and go, man, I have to get dinner ready, but I was just asked a $50,000 question here by my kid. And you stop and you find the words and put it into words. Okay. So there, and don't be alone. You know, strength in numbers. You have to join parents' organizations, start parents' organizations. You have legal rights. I was just talking to a lawyer. I think his name is Chris J. He's a lobbyist too at the State House and stuff, and for pro-life issues and life issues and Catholic concerns, not just about the church itself, but about society. And he can give advice too, so like to parents, to know your rights. Sometimes you're not even sure, what are my rights now today as a parent, right? They've taken so many rights away from parents. So I'm all about empowering parents, right? You don't have to have the same guidelines as any other parent. Every family is unique, right? But just have some. But be able to explain why. And also, if you use what's called the Socratic method with your kids, where you don't tell, you ask questions back and forth with a resolution. But if they can go through the process themselves and think about it, they'll own it. It's not just, well, these are mom and dad's values. It's, well, we watched Family Guy together as a family, and we talked about it. And yeah, it's kind of funny, but it's also really crude. I don't know. I don't know. It's just too much of that's not so great, right? If they can own that themselves. Do you know who Dr. Jordan Peterson is? So he's really awesome, right? He taught at Harvard for 6 years. Did you know that? He's from Canada, but brilliant guy. He wrote a book. Well, the book's not, I don't know, the book doesn't do it for me, but his talks are amazing. Just go to YouTube and look up Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a psychologist, and he's doing theology of the body without knowing it. And there's many young adults who follow him and are tapping into his stuff. And he says this wonderful thing, which I always tell to parents. You can't always protect people, but you can make them strong. Isn't that beautiful? You can't always protect them. You can try, but at a certain point, they're going to go out into the world, make their way, but you can make them interiorly strong for themselves. Right? All right. So our young people today are struggling with identity, all kinds of identity, human identity, because the narrative in the culture is kind of a false narrative. and it's not helpful. And there are many, many philosophies, some old, some new, that have been bubbling below the surface and have just exploded now like a geyser or something. And just, again, sucking your kids away from you, no matter how much you try to give them. We breathe in the culture around us. They have that connection with their peers. Even if they're homeschooled, they still feel what's going on with their peers. So we are living in postmodern times. And one of the hallmarks of postmodernism is relativism, as you know, which says there's no truth. Truth keeps changing, but if truth keeps changing, then there's no truth, right? You have your truth, I have my truth. They might completely disagree, but nobody's right and nobody's wrong. So at a certain point, it comes to there's no truth. So back in the 60s, everyone was looking for the truth, right? Everyone was searching for the truth. Today, they're told there's no truth. So why search? So what you do is you shut your mind off, except the things you have to learn in school to get a job or to be whatever you want to be in life. You just learn for that practical function of getting the job you want or being in the profession you want to be in. But everything else, intellectual curiosity is shut off because they're told there's no truth to be found. So what is the point of logic and all of that stuff? It doesn't make sense, okay? And so what is the only thing you're left with if you shut thinking off and reason? What?
Chaos.
Chaos. Feelings. We're left with feelings, okay? So here's a way to think about the 4 major philosophical eras, which are from the beginning of time, human time. And this is oversimplified, but it brings in the part and the role of God. Right? So we need God. God is the answer to all of this. But we have to be able to grasp God. How can we grasp God in today's mentality, right? Today's structure, today's society, where God is unthinkable. God is unthinkable today. Young people aren't just like nice little Christians who doff the church. They can't even wrap their minds around the idea of God, right? And also, they've seen a lot of practical atheism, right? Nietzsche talked about this. Practical atheism. God is dead because we have killed him, right? He saw practical atheism around him in the 1800s. People, paid lip service to God, or they prayed, or they went to church, or punched their religious time clock, but it didn't make a difference in the way they lived. If Christians look like everybody else in every single aspect of life, then what difference does God make, right? Okay, but it's way more complex than that, of course. So here's a way to look at our philosophical eras. Pre-modern is there is a God, and we can't save ourselves. So these people keep God, religion, politics, family life, everything all together, right? And we still have pre-moderns with us. None of these eras cancel out the other era. They just sort of stack up and layer on top of each other. Then we have the modern era, which started, people place it at different times. Some people started with Darwin, 1850s. Other people started with World War I or World War II. There is no God, but we can save ourselves. The modern project, right? Our science, our brains, our intellect will save us, and our technology. Then postmodern, which some people put at the turn of the 20th century, some people put it as late as the 1960s. There is no God, and we can't save ourselves. Now what? But we're living in, and I agree with some philosophers say we live in postmodern times, which says there is no God and we don't need salvation. So I have believed for a long time, because I had the great grace of studying philosophy as a young woman and studying it all my life and knowing how important it is. Philosophy is not some pie-in-the-sky esoteric thing. It's very practical. It's very applied to how you think about the world and your worldview. So I really believe we need to lead our young people through the history of philosophy to help them understand why they think the way they think today. and free them up, liberate them by showing them where these different types of theologies came from, and that ideas have names and consequences. So the Catechism of the Catholic Church says that strong feelings are not decisive for morality or holiness. They are simply an inexhaustible reservoir of images and affections in which the moral life is expressed. But we are legislating today on people's feelings, how they feel, right? Which is impossible. So the most popular emoji is laughing and crying at the same time because we're so confused, right? All right. Also, and here's another rivulet, tributary that has flowed into the river of gender ideology. The sexual licentiousness of the 1960s led to sexual confusion. And I don't just mean gender confusion, I mean men didn't know how to be men anymore. Women didn't know how to be women anymore. We didn't know what our bodies were for. We didn't know what sex was for. And that led to sexual chaos. So now we're living in times of sexual chaos. Sexual licentiousness led to sexual confusion, led to sexual chaos that we're living today. So the great Canadian Catholic philosopher Charles Taylor talks about the buffered self, and Bishop Barron picked up on this, where if there is no truth, postmodern relativistic times tells us there's no truth out there. But you don't even have truth within either. Because if my truth disagrees with your truth, like, what's that? So I just turn inward. I put the earbuds in, pull up my hoodie, and there I go. And I'm not open to anything in the world because it has nothing to tell me. There's no truth, right? But when I rely on myself, there's not much there either, right? So it's a very lonely, isolated, sad existence in a sense, you know? Okay. So we want to liberate our young people. We want to liberate them. The opposite of the buffered self is the porous self. I don't mean like you don't know who you are, but you are open to influences around you. You pull your earbuds out, you walk down the street, you listen to the birds, you interact with people, and then you talk back to them too. So you're giving and receiving constantly with the world. So you know how people walk around with the big headsets on, the really big ones? So I used to never bother those people when I needed help. I travel a lot. It's like a big D&D, right? Do not disturb me. See, at least this you can look up, you can hear, right? But this is the biggest, So I'm a terrible person. I started to bother those people. And they're often young people, like young adults or whatever. And you know what? I thought they would be angry, but they're not. They look so happy that somebody reached out to them. I'm going, can you help me? Oh, sure. You know, they're so happy. All right. Okay, so that's just a few little pieces there. So without doing a whole lot of theology of the body, basics, I am going to talk to you about science is our friend, yes. We need to jump ahead, sorry. Don't look at the answers. So, which is correct for a human being to say, I have a body or I am a body? I have a body or I am a body? Now think about that. Because the answers to these two questions are completely different. Two different worldviews. Right? So no pressure now. Is it A or B? Do you have a question about it?
It's B.
How many say A? How many say B? It's B. Now, do you see the difference between them? If I have a body, it's a thing. It's a possession. It's not me. And I've just split myself in two. Who is the I, the true self, that has this other thing called the body? And because it's a thing, I can do whatever I want with it. You see? But if I am my body, then this is me. This is part of who I am. I'm not just body, I'm also soul. But I am soul, I am body. But our young people today think that they have bodies, and their true self is their soul. So I'm always screaming at young people, your soul is not your true self. They're like, what? I thought, Catholics, you just give them a spiritual answer and they're happy, right? Just get rid of them. It's like, nope. The language of Christianity is the body. We are all about the physical world. We are all about creation. We're all about stuff. And God working through matter. What are the sacraments? God working through matter. Right? So I have a body. Sorry, I Okay. And there are two different ways to be, not have a body. What are they? Don't say alive and dead. There are two different ways to be, not have a body. What are they? Two different ways to be in the image of God. Man and woman. See how slow on the draw we were there? That's why we need theology of the body. Okay? So the human person is body and soul together forever. Say that with me. The human person is body and soul together forever. Do you have a problem with any of those words and not how they're spelled? What? Are we really together forever, our body and soul? What is the definition of death? The separation of body and soul. It's going to be the worst day of your life. Okay? If a human person is body and soul and we get ripped apart, that can't be good. So Thomas Aquinas calls us incomplete persons at death. We become incomplete persons. Until what? The resurrection of the body. Are we getting these very bodies back, male and female? Yes, we are. Don't shake your head. Again, this is why John Paul II knew we needed theology of the body. We don't know who we are. Do you think that makes a difference? To understand that you're going to be, I always tell young people, get comfy. You're going to be together for a long, long time. Body and soul together forever. This is you. This is you. I don't like my nose. I don't want to have my nose at the resurrection of the body. It's going to be your nose, but your perfect nose. Okay? Is there something you don't like about yourself? Everything is going to be healed. Any chronic illness, pain, anomaly. You were born without a leg, you're going to have a leg. Right? Because that's what a human person is. 2 legs, 2 arms. If you didn't get one of those, you'll get it. At the resurrection of the body. Did you lose a limb? It's coming back. What about our spiritual ailments? What about mental illnesses? Are those going away? Yes. Are we going to be healed? Yes. Gender dysphoria, will that be healed? Yes. There's no confusion in heaven. We know who we are. Okay. Depression, is that going to be healed? This sounds like a healing service, right? Is there any arthritis out there? Lupus. All right. Yeah. So we need to think about this, right? Resurrection of the body. Actually, when I do TOB, I'm going to start a Theology of the Body retreat in Massachusetts tomorrow night. We're going to do the full resurrection of the body thing. It's so amazing. And as a radical feminist, I hated this. I hated learning this part of Theology of the Body. Because I was looking forward to just flying around like a soul, like Casper the Friendly Ghost forever, getting rid of my female body that gets pregnant and has periods and cramps and stuff, right? No cramps in heaven, but we will have our female body, right? This is it's called the glorified body, right? Okay. So, John Paul II calls us body-persons. We are body persons. Now, it sounds awkward, but it's actually a great way to talk about human beings. We are the freaks of the universe. We unite matter and spirit like no other creature. No other creature. Okay? The animals run around there, they all have different bodies, but they're more similar to each other than they are to us. Because we have immortal souls. Do they have souls? Yes, they have mortal souls, life principles that keep them alive. So our soul is also our life principle, but it's immortal. It can live on without the body. But only the body can fully express the whole person. So the body expresses the soul. I can't see Jackie's soul, but I can see her soul being expressed through her body. So souls are also gendered. Feminine bodies have feminine souls. And we kind of know this anyway, right? Because men and women are different. We think different, right? Now we have all the science, right, that we didn't have before. We have a cheat today, okay? We can take things that God told us are good for us and say, huh, really? I'm going to go check science, God, okay? It's true! What God told us are good for our bodies, our souls, our mental health, our spiritual health, our relationships, actually is. Oh my God. Things God told us is bad for us? I'm going to go fact check God, okay? What does science say? It's true. It's true. Whatever God told us is good or bad for us, actually is. And we have the sociology too, right? So science is our friend. Science is on God's side. I have a handout for you. It's called A Few Science Stats. And it shows how God, the Bible, the church, and creation are all saying the same thing. And science, they're all on the same page. It's the sexual revolution that's out in left field. Sorry, left-handed people. Out in left field, doing its own thing. And it's unscientific. Right? And it's bad for us, but we keep doing it. Because it feels good, and it sounds good, and it's easy and convenient. God's ways are not so easy and convenient, are they? But they're golden. They are golden for us. How many people started doing things God's way after not doing them God's way, and it started to pay off? Ooh, wow. That's a lot of experience here. A wealth of experience, yes. Or maybe you've done them God's way all your life, and they've paid off. And you don't want to find out what the alternative is, right? But now we have, I really believe God gave us this science today because he knew we were going to live in a very scientific age, very atheistic age, a very literal age that thinks only scientific truths are the only kind of truth. And so he said, yeah, take a look, take a peek. Vicki Thorne, who founded Project Rachel for post-abortion healing, is now doing the biology of the theology of the body. The science behind theology of the body, showing how it matches. Fascinating stuff. We just had her in Calgary with Christopher West. The people were mesmerized. Okay. Now, a few things to understand about the human person. We are like little trinities within ourselves. See, we have to educate our young people to who the heck we are as human beings. It's not automatic. We don't automatically understand who we are, body and soul, as persons, our faculties, all of this, how it all works. So we kind of, because it doesn't come into a subject that we teach in religious ed or school, we wind up just missing it altogether. You can spend your whole life, 12 years of Catholic school, and never be taught about what the human person is, who we are. And it's the stuff we need the most. It's basic to us, right? So we have a mind, a will, and a heart, with which we can reason, choose, and love. And the greatest of these is love. So we want all three working together. We're not brains and vats. We're not just activists doing, practical. We're not just a big ball of emotions. Right? We want all of them working together. Our reason, our intellect, our ability to choose well, and our ability to love and emote. Emotions are important. They're indicators. But I always ask young people, so if love is just about feelings, if your identity is just about feelings, what other really important things in your life do you base on feelings alone? Like going to school. And they laugh, right? Or going to work for adults. Or how about you got a sick kid screaming all night for 5 nights in a row, you haven't had any sleep. Do you feel like getting up to look after that child? No. So then they realize, oh yeah, so why would you base some of the most important things in your life, like your identity, like love and marriage, on feelings alone? Right? That doesn't make sense. So love is a choice. And I think this is really good news for guys, because we women like to feminize love, right? We love the gooey, emotional part of love, the drama, right? We love all that stuff. And if there's no drama, we're going to create it to entertain ourselves, right? And so men are like, well, I don't feel all that stuff, so I don't know, I guess love is not for me. It's like, no, actually, love is an act of the will. First of all, feelings come and go. Sometimes they're a bonus. Love is an act of the will. It's doing the good of the other, right? Willing and choosing and doing the good of the other, no matter what it costs me. Right? So again, this is good news. I have a little other handout I'm going to give you that shows the 7 stages to true love. It's from Love and Responsibility. How you get to marriage, what you're supposed to do. And the guys love it. The young men are like, this is what I'm supposed to do? And I'm like, yes, thank you. Thank you for telling me, right? Okay. Is God a person? God in 3 persons, blessed Trinity. Yes. We are only persons because God is a person. We're made in His image. So we don't get to make ourselves up. We don't have to create ourselves. We don't have to recreate ourselves. I always tell young people, you don't have to create your own gender. You don't have to work that hard. 2 genders, God gave it to you as a gift to live this gift of your sexuality. And the important point is that we're not talking stereotypes. There's not just one way to be a woman. There's not just one way to be a man. Being a woman does not mean being frou-frou and delicate and sweet. That's the ideal woman. And being a man means macho and tough and rugged. Some women are like that, some men are like that. That's not the ideal. Those are external qualities, and not everyone has them, and don't even have to aspire to them. So I think we could solve a lot of these gender problems if we help young people understand you are going to incarnate being a woman in a very unique way, as the woman that you are. You're going to incarnate being a man the way you do that in a very unique way. There's no standard that you have to live up to. Okay. So what does the Bible say the human person is? It's very short and sweet, but it's one of the most profound things we could say about the human person. It's in Genesis. We hear it all the time, but what does it mean? Made in the image of God, right? What does that really mean? And is it just our souls that are made in the image of God? Or is it our bodies also? Is it mainly our souls, because God is spiritual, or is it just our or is it our bodies, or is it both? It's both, because you can't have one part of you be in the image of God and not the other part. We're one person. And I could actually almost make the case that our bodies are more in the image of God than our souls. What? What is an image? Something you can we see our souls? Can we see our bodies? So our bodies are theology textbooks. If we can learn to read what John Paul II calls the language of our bodies, male and female, we're going to learn a lot about ourselves, each other, and God. All right. So male and female, He created them. Because this sentence does not have a period after it, made in the image of God, period. It's made in the image of God, male and female. So whatever comes after made in the image of God must explain image of God, right? Must be a big deal, whatever comes after image of God. Male and female, He created them. Anything else is a false identity. Anything else is a false identity. Satan is into fake IDs. He's always trying to get us off of our true identity. That's what he did in the Garden of Eden, right? He told Adam and Eve, you are not the beloved children of God. God is not your good father. You have to do your own thing, right? Okay. So the sexual difference is the image of God. Male and female is not just biology, it's revelation from God. It's saying something to us, something theological to us. Now, what if somebody's born intersex, they have same-sex attraction, they're experiencing gender dysphoria? Are they left out by this definition? No. What they're experiencing is a variation on a theme of male or female because there's nothing else. This is what God has told us is reality. Science only finds 2 human genders. So it's inclusive. But, right, so whatever you're experiencing sexually or in your identity, your gender confusion, it's a variation on a theme of male or female because there's nothing else. There's only 2 kinds of bodies. Even people who are born intersex, which means maybe not super clearly defined genitalia, or maybe a little of one and a little of the other, it's never 50-50. The person knows who they are, knows which more they lean more toward. It's still male or female. There's not like a third sex thrown in there somewhere. Okay. But owning our sex, our sexuality, and our gender can be a bit of a process if adults don't interfere with it, right? So I'm going to give you some gender stats. Actually, we'll take a break at 8:15. Is that okay? 8:15? Take a break? Okay. So, what percentage of the population is same-sex attracted? And it's held steady for a while. 3 to 6% of the population. Okay. What about transgender, meaning gender dysphoria? Classic gender dysphoria. I feel like a man trapped in a woman's body, a woman trapped in a man's body.
Less than 1.
What? You're going to have to talk really loud because all I can do is hear this choir practice behind me. They're talking right now. If you can't hear them, I can.
Less than 1.
Yeah, it's 0.2% of the population experiences true gender dysphoria. There's different types of trans, which we'll talk about as well. 70 to 80% of teens who identify as LGBTQ, if they are not interfered with and locked in with labels and hormones and surgeries and false identities, will identify as heterosexual by the time they're in their early 20s. Some will persist in it. 20 to 25% will persist. The rest, no. Small children who before puberty, little boys saying I'm a little girl saying I'm actually a little boy, the majority of those kids, the vast majority of those kids, but when the hormones kick in at puberty, are going to identify as their biology. The identity will match the biology. Unless they're interfered with incredibly invasive, unhealthy, risky, harmful. We don't even know the damage that's being done to these kids with puberty blocking hormones. Hormones are not to be messed with. These are powerful, powerful things, right? Do you know that these puberty blocking hormones make these kids infertile? Did you know that? Do you think an 8-year-old could make a choice that they never want to be a parent? So this is child abuse. Let's say it loud and clear. Yeah. So it's like a grand experiment, a bad grand experiment being done on our young people today with all of these hormones and surgeries. And I always tell young people, go to YouTube and look up detransitioning youth. So these are young people who, as teens or preteens or teens, were sort of recruited. They say I was recruited by the trans cult to just transition. Nobody did therapy with me, nobody did counseling, nobody talked to me and asked what was going on in my life. And then they realized this did not make me happy to transition. But some of the damage is irreversible now, right? So one young woman, she now has a 5 o'clock shadow, Adam's apple, lowered voice. She had a mastectomy, double mastectomy. They go so far as to have hysterectomies and butt reduction, right? So do not be afraid of, activists, gender activists, or laws that are going to come after you. Be afraid of these young people who've had their bodies mutilated, who are going to come after us and say, why did you let them do this to us? We were just kids, we were just teens, and you didn't stop them because you were afraid? I'm more afraid of those kids, right? So I don't know, God has put it on my heart to fight for them even though I don't see a lot of them directly, but I can talk to people who will be working with them. Even adults, so the big threat is like suicide. Okay, these kids will kill themselves, that's what we're told, right? They will kill themselves if they're not allowed to transition. There is a high suicide rate among the truly gender dysphoric, but there's also a high suicide rate after they transition, too. It's very, very high. So the church will always counsel, according to good psychology, not to do surgeries. People are going to do what they're going to do anyway, right? But we urge good counseling, good therapy, to try to live in accord with one's biology, if at all possible, right? So knowledge is power. The more we know, the more our young people know, the better decisions they're going to be able to make. They won't have to just listen to the narrative of the culture and the media and the trans activists and gender activists, right? So Bill Nye, the science guy, right? Have you seen his latest on Netflix? Bill Nye Saves the World. He is now teaching straight up gender ideology as scientific fact. He's using all the exact same talking points. So science is starting to cave. Some areas of science, some scientists, there are people entering the scientific field with that agenda. So they're saying things, they're reinterpreting the good data, or they're doing sort of false scientific experiments, etc., and doing junk science and agenda science. So it's going to get to the point where the Catholic Church will be the cheese standing alone, standing up to the body. So rather than us being some kind of outdated, out of touch, draconic entity, the Catholic Church may be the only entity that's taking the body seriously, taking matter seriously. And not only that, scientifically, but as a revelation of God. Now, does God love everybody? Does he love trans people? Yes. And gay people? Yes. And no matter what we're struggling with, God loves us. So should we love people too? Yes. Absolutely. Never, and we love our kids. We never ever withdraw our love or make them feel that way. Does that mean we have to go along with everything they believe and everything they want to do and everything their lifestyles, etc.? No. And don't fall for that. And even if our young people reject that in us, Mom, if you really love me, Dad, if you really love me, you have to go along with this. No, I can still love you. I don't have to love everything you do. So there's no God loves you but. It's just God loves you. Right? The question is, do you love yourself? So we have this amazing book called Love Thy Body. Because a lot of the things we think we're doing today that are respectful of the body or creative with the body or whatever is actually very disrespectful to the body and dishonoring the body. Because the body has its own meaning already. It's for us to learn what that meaning is. So I tell young people that one of our big tasks in life is to accept our bodiliness. You know, accept that the bodies that we are. Bodies are us. Okay? And that can take a lifetime for a lot of different reasons. We may have very good reasons that we don't like our bodies or whatever. But we were talking today about disabled people, right? They seem to love their bodies, right? And we healthy people, you know, we don't like our bodies sometimes. And here's the disabled people saying, I love life. I'm so happy to be alive. I'm in a wheelchair, but I love life. Okay, so I tell young people, my prayer for you is that you will get up in the morning and rejoice that God made you a man, that God made you a woman, that you'll learn the mystery of what that means and how to live it. Live it your own way. You don't have to live it anybody else's way or look at Instagram models or whatever. Okay? All right. Because we're going to be male and female in eternity. It's not going away. The body's not going away. Our sexuality is not going away. All right. So very quickly and briefly, the different kinds of trans there are the three classic ones are gender dysphoria. That means feeling trapped, like a man trapped in a woman's body, as they say, or a woman trapped in a man's body. And that's very rare. That's extremely rare. And I say to young people, wouldn't it make more sense to be born having your soul match your body match your soul. Wouldn't that be make more sense? Then there's extreme male homosexuality. This is a man a gay man who wants to be with a straight guy. He doesn't want to be with another gay man. So he has to pass as a woman to be with a straight man. Follow? You with me? Then there's autogynephilia, which is a fetish. A man gets excited seeing himself dressed as a woman, but he's still attracted to women, so he will call himself a lesbian if he transitions. It's trendy, right? It's a trendy thing to do. You can belong to a tribe if you sign up for being trans. Trauma. Our young people are dealing with trauma, and they feel the way they can deal with the trauma is to flee the body or the gender in which they experience that trauma. It's a manufactured social construct that, again, is coming at them from across the board, from everywhere. In Humanae Vitae, Pope Paul VI, his 4 predictions of what would happen if society wholeheartedly embraced contraception, which is really a radical manipulation of the body. He said, we will get to the point where we think we can do anything we want with the body. The body is not sacred, it is raw material to be manipulated. I leave it up to you to see if there's a connection there and if that has come to pass. And then another very interesting thing that happened was, I was in Alberta with the Catholic schools out there talking to teachers and principals and superintendents, and the trans kids are actually transferring to the Catholic schools because they feel safer. Oh, but we're the haters, right? No, we're not haters. I don't accept that. It's like, okay, you just judged me. You just name called me. You just labeled me, and I think that's a very hateful act because you can't see my heart. There's no hate in here. So I think you just judged me, hated me, and you're the hater. Okay, I don't take none of that. Okay, we know, how can we hate people? I'm sure there's plenty of Christian haters, but my God tells me to love everybody. Jesus tells me to see Him in other people. I don't care what your deal is. I have to love you because God made you and I see Christ in you, right? So I asked these teachers in Alberta, what do you think is going on with the trans? I said, I've read all the studies. I know what the explanations are of these different types of trans. You know what they said to me? A superintendent and a principal separately said the exact same thing. They said these young people have no significant relationship with adults in their lives. They might even be with their biological parents, but there's no family life at home. Nobody's home. Nobody talks to them. They're kind of on their own, raising themselves, parenting themselves. So their influences are the media and their peers. Now, even if you do have family life and you have a significant relationship with your parents, again, the culture is so strong, right? If they don't have theology of the body to chew on, they can still get sucked away with every good thing you have tried to give them, including yourself and your time and your love, right? But if we can give them theology of the body to chew on, these kids are smart and they're good and they want to know what's up, right? So we have to educate ourselves so we can educate them and help them. And we're just at the beginning of this. The theology of the body, the church has been sitting on theology of the body for 40 years. And this is where it's got us, right? So, but this is a grassroots movement. Do not wait for it to come from the top down. Ain't gonna happen. We have a few woke bishops, and that's about it, who are doing something like Bishop Paprocki in Springfield, Illinois, and good folk like that, right? We think of it this way. This is exciting. We get to be part of it. Grassroots movement, right? Our kids can't wait for us or wait for it to come from officialdom. Okay, it can't get more official than a stone cold saint. Okay, JP too. We love you, Giovanni, Paolo. Okay. Anyway, all right. So we're going to take a break for 15 minutes, and we're going to come back. So sex and gender are really the same thing. But today, you know what the narrative is. And you ask any 6-year-old, they'll tell you this, because they've been indoctrinated into sophisticated gender ideology. Sex is your body. It's your biology. It's what the doctor assigned you when you're born by looking at you. But that's not what you are. It has nothing to do with your spirit, your soul, and what you feel you are, your true self, right? This is what we're told here. But actually, they're the same thing. Gender was only grammatical. That's all it ever was. Your sex and your gender were always the same thing. You could use those words interchangeably. And grammar was really more about, gender was really more about grammar. But today it's taken on a life of its own. But our first clue is our body. If you have a male body, you're a man. You have a male soul that goes with that male body. If you have a female body, you have a female soul that goes with that body, and you're a woman. John Paul II talks about masculinity and femininity being inscribed in our interior. Isn't that beautiful? And it all starts there and is expressed through the body. So gender, the word gender actually has to do with genitals. It's how you generate life. That's why we have gender. And there's only two ways to generate life. There's only two ways to be a parent, either as a mother or a father. The end. There's no other way. But if we cut our genitals off from, no, sorry, it was a bad choice of words. If we cut genitals off, no, still bad choice of words. If we separate genitals from generation, from life, well, of course, then gender can be anything you want. The spirit side of it, the spiritual side of it can be anything you want, and you're not limited to those two ways of generating life. Does that make sense? So gender really comes from generate, progeny, genealogy, even the word genius, all about life. But today, and again, there's that connection with contraception. So if we suppress our fertility for most of our lives, well, then what's our genitals for? They're playthings. They're for pleasure alone. Pleasure alone. And this is not true. Okay? So, I'll just tell you a quick story. No, I won't. We don't have time. So, get this. As soon as you see this split of gender and sex, if you accept this in any way, shape, or form, it's over. It's all downhill from there. You just gave away the farm. Okay? There is no split of sex and gender. Gender confusion, gender dysphoria is real, but it's a psychoaffective disorder that needs treatment, counseling, and therapy. Okay? It's not a choice of life or something that's across the board. Every person has this split within them and makes up their own gender. So Christopher West has a wonderful new book. We don't have it here with us, but it's called Eclipse of the Body. How we lost the meaning of sex, gender, marriage, and family, and how to reclaim it. There's also the book When Harry Became Sally, which sounds like a snarky title, but it's not meant to be. It's the best book you can get with all the science, all the stats, all the facts on where transgenderism came from, the trans movement, and how to deal with that. By Ryan Anderson, who's a wonderful research fellow. He also did a lot on same-sex marriage issues. And then there's this really fantastic book called Loving My LGBT Neighbor, Being Friends in Grace and Truth. So this does not deal with church teaching. It just is like, practically speaking, how can we have neighbors, have friends, our children, our family members, our colleagues who are dealing with some LGBTQ thing, or they're identifying. And you say, well, that's easy, just love everybody. Okay, but sometimes it's a little sticky. You're put in a situation, you're invited to a same-sex wedding. Can a Catholic go? No. Why not? Because you are not just a guest there, you are witnessing to the truth of this marriage. Remember they used to say, does anyone here have a reason why this couple is not to be married? They don't do this anymore. They published the bans of marriage before that happened. But that's silently is what's going on. You are witnessing to the truth of this being a real marriage, and it's not. Okay? So, or somebody moves into your neighborhood, 2 lesbian moms, and your child wants to go play with them, the kids. Okay. And then your kid starts asking you questions. How do you explain this to your kids? You have two gay dads who come to your church. They're baptized Catholics. They want to volunteer. They want to be lectors. Okay. They want to be ushers. Okay. They want to teach catechism. Okay. Now what? What are you going to tell the kids about why this other kid has 2 dads? Right? So how do we live together in this world? Right? All right. So if you go to my blog right now, that's my blog. It's my name. You can also follow my blog via email. You just sign up. And I always post like the latest books, videos, really helpful videos on theology of the body matters. There's a wonderful, very brave British educator who is actually an inclusion educator who's spent her life including kids who feel left out, disabled kids. And now, but she won't go along with some of this stuff that she feels is child abuse too, with the kids. And she's also working with detransitioning youth. So she said, you can have my career, you can take my career away. But she says some really important things in a very short space of time. And this woman is very liberal and open-minded, but even for her, this is too much, right? Some of what's going on. And then if you have kids that are struggling, bestforchildren.org. This is the ACP, the American College of Pediatricians, if you've heard of that. So it's not the APA, that's the old institutional organization. But these people who belong to the ACP, the bestforchildren.org, are real pediatricians. They have just left this organization and formed their own because they don't believe in a lot of things, not just transgender and hormones and all that is in the best interest of children, but many other things that the APA is signing on to. So there's these 2 separate groups now. And the Southern Poverty Law Center has labeled them a hate group. So that's kind of like a badge of honor today, you know, if you get labeled as a hate group by the SPLC. So our young people are hurting. They need the good news of theology of the body, which is, I believe it is the new evangelization. It's a new way to present the gospel in a way that people today understand, because people don't believe in sacred authorities and sacred texts. They barely believe in God. So how are we going to reach them? Where, with the things they care about? Has the world given up on love? The body, beauty, sex, relationships? No. And God is all about that. It's not just like, well, God's all about that so he can go tell us about something else. No, he'll stay there with you. He's all about that. Okay? So as a 14-year-old girl said, it's not conversion therapy to learn to love my body. Isn't that beautiful? She's lived as a boy since she was 11. And she's coming back, returning to her own body, coming home to herself. It's not conversion therapy to learn to love my body. So where's all this gender ideology going? Well, you've heard of expired, tired, and wired. There's also broke, woke, and bespoke. So gay is kind of like old hat, right? I tease my friends in Courage. CourageRC.com is the same-sex spiritual support group. Oh, sorry. It's a spiritual support group for Catholics who experience same-sex attraction. You've heard of Courage, right? So they're awesome. They have chapters in most dioceses. Their headquarters are in Connecticut. They're international now. It's confidential membership. Some members are out. The Daughters of St. Paul have worked with them from the beginning, since they were founded in 1980. By the way, fun fact, they were founded by 2 gay guys from New York. People think it was the church that founded it, but these 2 men in 1980 went to Cardinal Cook at the time and said, you know what, we're Catholic, we want to come back to our Catholic faith, we want to get out of the lifestyle, their words. Do you have anything for people like us? Cardinal Cook said, I don't know. And he looked around and there was nothing. So he tapped Father Harvey, And Father Michelle also helped him, and some other psychologists and good priests, and they started this organization. So I tease my friends in Courage and I say, you guys are so old hat, you're so boring. But trans is getting tired too, because it's still male-female. So what's wired, what's hot now, is non-binary, gender non-conforming. I'm neither. Or I make up my own gender. I'm just fluid, and I continue to be fluid. Right? Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are raising their child gender-free. What is that? There's no such thing. What is that, right? They think that's in the best interest of their child. Wow. Okay? But that child is going to exhibit either little boy characteristics, is going to start interacting with the world as a little boy or a little girl. And if they're prevented from that by their parents are doing them damage, right? Okay. Let's move on to going to God through desires. So, we are Christians. We are not Buddhists. Buddhists believe that desires are bad. Buddhists are very smart people. Buddhism is more of a philosophy than a religion, thousands of years old, and they figured out a long time ago that when we can't get what we want, we suffer. So they believe that desires cause suffering, therefore desires are bad. We should try to eliminate desires in our lives and reach nirvana, which is the absence of all desire. But that's a desire in itself, to desire, not to desire. So we can't get away from desires. We believe as Christians that God put desires in our hearts. And we go to God through our desires. We live our lives through our desires. So desires are very deep. Desires are not whims. Desires are not attractions. They're not inclinations. They're not feelings. Desires are these deep-rooted things like, I want to be happy. I want to live forever. I want to love and be loved. I want to have meaning in my life, meaning and purpose. So everyone loves Psalm 37 because we get the desires of our heart. But sometimes we forget the first part. Delight in the Lord, and you will get the desires of your heart. So if we're smart, what's the best thing we could ever desire? What? God himself, right? Because my favorite definition of God is the source of all good things. So in God, you can have everything. Everything you want. C.S. Lewis said, if I find desires in myself that can't seem to be satisfied in this world, maybe I am made for another world. Ultimately. Okay? So, C.S. Lewis also says, our desires aren't big enough. We're so content with little joys. Go big or go home. Right? It was, I don't know if it was St. Therese or St. Augustine or both of them talked about, like, we have to take this little thimble that we are and expand it to this larger cup because God wants to fill it, right? Now, will God ever withhold his love from us? No, people are confused about this because we're used to conditional love from human beings. I love you more when you're good. I talk to young people a lot, so I say sometimes we get the feeling from our parents they love us more when we get good grades. I said, but we're imperfect, we're humans, right? But God loves us unconditionally. His very nature is love. So he's already loving us as much as he possibly can. He doesn't love us less sometimes and more other times. As Jesus said, God pours out his sunshine and his rain on the good and the bad, right? He's not like, I'm going to give the good people sunshine and the bad people rain. It's like, no, we all get the same, right? And that's like his love. Pouring out his love and his grace on us all the time. His help, his grace, his help. There for the taking. Now, are we going to get that Lamborghini that we want? Are we going to get the iPhone X just because we ask for it and desire it? And we love the Lord at the same time? Not necessarily. And will it really make us happy? Maybe for a little while. For a little bit. So, God never says no to our prayers and our desires. He either says, yes, wait, or I have something better for you. Okay? So we go to God through our desires. Sin is when what we perceive as good is actually not good. Right? So Thomas Aquinas said the human being can only desire what they perceive as good. You say, no, that can't be true. What about people who like torture animals or something? That's just so evil. They do it because they get some sick, twisted pleasure out of it. So they're perceiving that as a good. Or we desire something good, but we go about getting it in the wrong way, in a bad way. So sin doesn't make God mad at us, it makes him sad because we're hurting ourselves. Will our desires be totally fulfilled in this life? No, I can promise you that. Will some of them be fulfilled? Has anyone ever had an ice cream cone? We have lots of little desires filled all the time. Maybe your desire was to be married, and now you are. Your desire is to do the profession you're doing, etc. Okay. Sometimes we wonder, though, we're a little afraid because we know we have to love God if we want to get to heaven. We wonder if we love God enough. Yeah, you do. You just don't know it. What? Is there someone you love? Is there something you love in this life? Or something you like? Even if you don't have it, you know it's there. Even if you don't have it in its fullness, you have it in its partialness. Where do you think it came from? God. All good gifts come from above, right? But God wants us not to just love his gifts, he wants us to love the giver of the gifts. Right? So we have our whole lives to keep flipping that and saying, okay, Lord, thank you for this thing, but you know what? I love you more than this thing. Okay. So, oops, there's science again. So, we go to God through our desires. Theology of the body is not the repression or the indulgence of desires, but the redemption of desires. So, people tell us, you Catholics are so repressed. You wait to have sex for marriage, right? Save sex for marriage. Well, which is not repression, but what's the difference between repression and self-mastery? Repression is bad. We don't want to do repression, right? Repression is pushing down all of our feelings, whether they're emotional, sexual, physical, whatever. We don't even feel what we're feeling because we're so austere or harsh with ourselves, or we're so afraid. John Paul II says, if you do that, you will explode. Okay? He says, if you do not deal with your sexuality and your sexual feelings, you will explode. If you think you can deal with them by repressing them. Okay? So we don't want repression. We want self-mastery. Can we ever stop thinking, having thoughts going through our minds? No. Can we ever stop feeling, having emotions coming and going? No. And we don't want to. That's what it means to be a human being. So there's no such thing as distraction in prayer, by the way. What? You just take all of what you are at that moment, you go in, and you start to sort it out before the Lord. That's what prayer is. There's no distraction. I forgot to feed the cat, I forgot to feed the cat, I forgot to feed the cat. Don't just text yourself a note or write yourself a note where you don't want Sophie to start, okay? I'm so mad at her. Oh, is that good food for prayer? Yeah. Oh yeah, let's take that to the Lord. So there's no such thing as distraction in prayer. We can never stop desiring, thinking, feeling, and we don't want to. We just bring it all to the Lord. We open it all up to the Lord. So, repression thinks the body or sex is bad and denies the gift. Indulgence acknowledges the gift but abuses it. And redemption knows the body and sex is good, practices self-mastery, and receives the gift from Christ. So we have to believe that God has good things for us in this life and in the next, certainly. Will all of our desires be fulfilled in the next life? Beyond our wildest imaginings. Okay. So, the two extremes are repression and indulgence. And what does repression lead to? Explosion, indulgence. What does indulgence lead to? Repression. I am never going to do that again. That was so uncalled for, and I'm just so exhausted and worn out. I'm going to repress everything. Doesn't work. So it's like ping pong. Boing, 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 boing. because we don't know about redemption of desires. All right? Now we're not going to do this full chart, but Christopher West talks a lot about the starvation diet. Okay? How many people here, when they were growing up, had one sex talk with their parents? The talk. One talk. How many people had maybe 2 talks? How many people had 0 talks about starvation diet? Not good. Now maybe in the past we could get away with that. How many people had open, healthy, age-appropriate conversation about sex all their lives with their parents? Nobody. Nobody? Okay. Usually there's like one person, I'm like, you are so blessed. You're not blessed. Okay. So maybe we could get away with that in the past. No longer. No longer. We have internet porn. We have porn machines in our pockets. We have to talk to our young people about all kinds of things. And theology of the body gives us the language, right? There's so much to theology of the body. After this afternoon, some of the folks were saying, there is a lot to this, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, we didn't even begin. Like, we didn't even scratch the surface. So we are so hungry for information about the body. If nobody feeds us, we will go to the dumpster. We will do the fast food diet, the junk food diet, because we need something. We can't live on silence anymore. And silence is literally killing our kids now, right? If they're so confused about gender and sex, and then we have the porn and all of that. So we don't have an option anymore. We have to not do what our parents did to us. We have to educate ourselves and talk about stuff. We need that banquet spread. Now, have you heard love is love is love is love? Is that true? No. That's all spiritual. That has nothing to do with body persons. Love always has a physical component. There's different types of love. So John Paul II said the body has meaning that is not only biological, but also theological and spiritual. Man is called to love in his unified totality. Love includes the human body, and the body is made sharer in spiritual love. Carl Anderson, who has been the Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus forever, says, he's a big TOB guy, he's written books on it. He says, there can be no authentic theology of love abstracted and divorced from the Creator's design of the human body and human sexuality. Because, at one of the synods on the family, there was talk of, we need a theology of love, meaning just spiritual, divorced from the body. You know where that's going, right? The body has a meaning in the Creator's plan for the vocation and redemption of every human person. Now, the Greeks had at least 15 different types of love. They even have a word for playful love. We're only going to use these 4 because these are the most known. And this is how God loves us. With all types of love. Eros is not a dirty word. Erotic is not a dirty word. It is lust that destroys true love. Okay? John Paul II says, Eros at its deepest level is that inner power that attracts man to the true, the good, and the beautiful. Right? So lust actually destroys true Eros. You do not go to the cross for someone you do not feel passionate love for. You do not lay down your life for someone you are not madly in love with, right? And this is how God created us, in this love. And marriage includes all 4 as well. But which of these do we not do when we're kids? Right, Eros. Little kids can do agape love. Here's my toy. You can play with my toy. That's a big deal for a little kid, right? That is huge. They just learned about mine, personal property. And now they're asking me to share? Okay. Right? Okay. So, we're little kids bopping along, praying our little prayers to Jesus, our little night prayers, reading our kids' Bible, and then puberty hits. And we're like, whoa, what is this? What are these new feelings? What do I do with them? How come nobody's helping me? How come nobody's talking to me about what to do with these new feelings? And they're not just physical, sexual urges and feelings that we have, right? We start crushing on people, right? Oh, I'm a girl, so I don't know how the guys think about this stuff, but if he doesn't ask me out, my life is over. I am going to die if he doesn't notice me, right? We have these feelings way beyond our years, these very mature feelings. And it's not just physical or sexual. We have, it's intimacy. We're longing for intimacy. We want to be known and loved at our deepest levels. Intimacy is not just sexual. We've reduced it to sexual intimacy. There's many different types of intimacy. Into-me-see. I want to be known and loved at my deepest levels, and I want to know and love others at their deepest levels. But it's not just that either. It's not just physical, sexual, and spiritual, emotional. We start to feel our need for God at a level we've never felt before as kids. The kids have their connection with God, right? But now we're growing up, we're becoming adults. Christopher West calls this the ache. It's nameless. We can't even give it a name. It's this longing that we feel, this ache inside of us, this almost loneliness or something. And it's for God. And it starts at puberty. And if our young people don't know that's ultimately what's going on within them, and that no human being is ever going to be able to fulfill that. Even if we're called to marriage, it's going to be great. That human person is going to fulfill us on a human level, but there's something deeper. And Christopher West has this wonderful story. Because I have young people who know theology of the body, young adults, and they're like, sister, now that we know what marriage really is, how do we keep it from becoming an idol? Like, oh, once I get married, it's going to be, rosy, peachy keen, and like demand so much of my spouse and out of this marriage because I know what marriage can be. And he said, my wife and I, we knew theology of the body before we got married. And we thought, we're going to have the greatest marriage on earth. He said, but knowing it and living it are two different things. He said, we were so focused on each other, so demanding that we be God for each other. We forgot about going to God side by side together, right? And he said, and after I got married, madly in love with his wife, great marriage, they have 5 kids now, he said the ache was still there, right? So this is why human beings are the only addictive animal, because we have this capacity for the infinite, for God. And we try to fill it with finite things, and we become addicted to those finite things, whatever they are, right? So animals are perfectly calibrated. They just follow their instincts, and they are fine and dandy. Human beings are uncalibrated. We have to not curb our desires, we have to channel them. We have to practice self-mastery. We have to practice virtue. Vir, V-I-R, what does that mean? Latin. Man. No, that's V-E-R, it's Veritas. V-I-R is man. Virtue is the manly thing to do. Okay? Manly, yes, but I like it too. So, that's an old Irish Spring commercial. Okay. Because they wanted the women to buy Irish Spring too. So it's also for women. But it costs, right? It's a battle, it's a challenge, it's a struggle to practice virtue and calibrate ourselves. I'm not going to work today. I'm so depressed, I'm going to sit at the bottom of this tree and eat nuts all day. Said no squirrel ever. Right? They get up 7 days a week. They sleep just enough. They eat just enough. They play just enough. They are perfect, man. They never sin. They can't sin. They give glory to God every second of their lives doing what they do. We have to calibrate ourselves, right? But whenever we choose to do the right thing, to love, even the smallest little act, we give tremendous glory to God because we chose it. Okay, so we've got to tell our young people, we need God. We need God, man. Like, I read all these articles. I even did a think tank at a prestigious Catholic University. They hired me to come be part of their think tank about millennials leaving the church and not coming back. So everyone's in panic mode, right? And I've read, and when we were talking about this, for the first half hour, nobody mentioned God or Jesus. I was like, the bride of Christ had to speak up about her husband. It's like, are we talking just about belonging to the church, like on a human level? Are we talking about like belief in God and worship? Oh yeah, him too. Yeah. God can be there. Okay. I've read these fine articles doing heavy duty, data, statistics, sociology about millennials and now Gen Z. They're the under 19-year-olds, and then the under 3-year-olds are completely other generation. We don't have a name yet. They're all leaving the church. We're in panic mode. And it's like, isn't that part of our problem? If we're not talking about God and Jesus as the answer to all our problems? Okay. So if we don't understand what's happening at puberty, we can start to think that God only loved me when I was a pure, innocent little kid. And God can't love me anymore with all my new feelings, and maybe I'm starting to do some stuff I shouldn't do, and sin, sexual sins or whatever, our problems and struggles. So when we most need God in our teenage years, we tend to drift away. When we most need Him. So we have to help our young people understand that God wants us to grow up. He gave us these feelings. He wants us to become men and women of God. But who's helping us do that? All we hear, I get so sick of that. We're all children of God. I'm a child of God. Like, okay, I get it. But I'm His adult child. I'm an adult. Who's helping me become the man and woman of God that I'm supposed to be? Theology of the body, that's who. That's what's helping us. What to do with all these feelings and stuff. And come to the full stature of Christ, as the Bible says. So why did God make us this way? So I always tell young people, when you feel a sexual temptation, like first of all, let's not call it a sexual temptation. Why are we taking something good and then putting this dark cloud of suspicion on it and kind of labeling it as something bad? When we're feeling something, whatever kind of feeling it is, emotional, sexual, physical, whatever it is, ask ourselves, why did God make me this way? Why am I feeling this way? And the answer is because God made me for true love. God made everyone for true love. True love and true life. And it's so strong and real, and God's love is so strong and real, and I am so much like God in that I can love and give life and receive love and receive life like God, that I can feel it in my body. The body that I am. God did not give us sex to reproduce the species. Okay? That's what squirrels do. That's what the animals do. They want the survival of the species. We want eternal survival. That's what we do, of the individual. Okay? We don't reproduce the species. We have other little images of God. That's what we do. So why do I feel this way? It's a good reason. God made me for true love, and it's meant to be so strong because God's love for me is strong like that. Okay? And we participate in God's love and life. So that's what we need to tell our young people. How do we live this redemption of the body? Through the wonderful virtue of chastity. Now, chastity does not mean no sex. Okay? It's the nuns that confused everybody because we take a vow of chastity. And for us it means celibate chastity. But that's not what chastity itself is. Okay? I'm a celibate and I don't like that word. Do you like that word, Sister Claire? Celibacy simply means the absence of something very good, namely sex within marriage, if that's your vocation. It's an empty word. It's a negative word. It's an empty word. It doesn't say much. Abstinence. Again, absence of sex, absence of something good. Waiting. People who perform marriage, what are you doing? I'm standing here waiting for true love. No, you're not. You're in training for true love. You're preparing for true love. You're in preparation for true love. You're doing active things. There's even a technical word, continence. Sounds like depends. I dislike all of these terms. The beautiful term is virginity. Beautiful term, which means totally God's body and soul. And there's something called restored virginity for people who've made bad choices. And if you have been violated, the church has always said from the beginning, 2,000 years ago, you are still a virgin. Virginity cannot be taken from you. It can only be given freely away. Okay? So chastity, this is the best. This is the best word. It's a very rich virtue. And it's a working virtue. It doesn't mean perfect. It means getting up every day, getting back on the horse when we fall, and working at it. Taking up the challenge of chastity, which means, say it with me, integration of soul and body with regard to sexuality according to our vocation. What's not to like? We all like whole foods, right? Organic, integration, holistic, right? That's what chastity means, being whole, body and soul in our sexuality. And when we start practicing these things, we gain them. We acquire them. I start to practice sexual honesty, I become a sexually honest person. I practice sexual integrity, I become a person of integrated sexuality, etc. Now, men like to be strong, physically strong. Men admire that. Women admire that about them. But not all men can be physically strong. And it's going to fade with age. Okay? And God doesn't care how much you can bench press. He really doesn't. But God cares about, what about inner strength? What about being a man, a righteous dude who always does the right thing no matter what, right? That's admirable, right? That's beautiful. It's the only thing God cares about. Women like to be beautiful. Men admire that about women. External beauty. Not all women can be externally beautiful, and it fades with age. What about inner beauty? The beauty of practicing virtues, etc. That's all that God cares about. So if somebody propositions you, you just say, no thanks, I'm practicing freedom. John Paul II calls chastity a basic human freedom. He says if we're all entangled in all these addictions of the body and here, there, giving bits of myself all over the place, I'm not whole. I'm not whole to give that total gift of myself someday to someone. And again, there's healing. Healing is possible, and restored virginity and all that good stuff. But wouldn't you rather, do you want to have to do all that healing work, or would you rather, start off here? Okay, if possible. Okay. So married chastity, people are like, well, what the heck is that? We're having sex because we're married. So what's married chastity mean? Well, all of this still has to be practiced, right? And do married people sometimes get attracted to people who are not their spouses? Yes. Everything that goes with fidelity, everything that goes with practicing family virtues, raising children, etc., etc. And even natural family planning is part of married chastity. Huge part of married chastity, right? Okay, so I'm going to wrap up with this. Ooh, sorry, I went 10 minutes over. If we think this earth is all there is, if our faith in heaven is shaky, yeah, we're going to be grabbing at whatever we can get here. We're going to be looking for our next fix online because we're just not sure about what's coming next. But if we believe in heaven, we believe in God, we trust. The best thing our parents ever gave us was delayed gratification, right? You cannot have that candy bar because you're going to ruin your supper. Now we have to do it for ourselves. Learn delayed gratification in all kinds of ways. So redemption of the desires, redemption of the body. This is the heavenly wedding, by the way. Christ and the church, God and us. So what can parents do? Educate. Educate yourself, which with theology of the body, again, it's not a head trip. It's more of a formation. It's formative. It's something you can put into practice immediately and live. Educate yourselves, your family, others. Start small. Already tonight, you know more than most people. You know more than most Catholics already, just by tonight. So I have a friend who says, I'm just one class ahead of you. One class ahead of you. I had a 5th grade class asking me to come down to New Orleans and teach them theology of the body. I'm like, no, you do it. Do it yourselves. Again, I'm the hit and run nun. They don't know me. Why should they trust me? They know you, right? You're the one that are with them day in, day out. Okay. And again, we can't wait for the parish and school, but it's coming. Your school's here in Manchester. Your superintendent's big TOB, big on TOB. It's coming. Matt Frad's going to be here. Got some other TOB speakers, and then you can start to learn it in school. Yay. We need to have courage. The courage to act boldly, to talk and to share, and become some kind of a theology of the body activist, whatever God is calling you to. Okay? We need theology of the body activists. Love our culture, love our broken, hurting society, our broken, hurting kids. Never stop loving the people around us who even might be very hostile towards us at times. We're supposed to love our enemies, right? Okay. And pray. Pray for our loved ones. Never give up on your kids. Never give up on praying. And for our world. I could tell you so many stories of, sometimes we think people, if we water down church teaching, people will stay in the church or they'll like us better. And it's like, no, I can tell you so many stories of young people who demand, they want to know that something's true. They want to know that people stand firm. And they want to hear the full truth. They have a right to it. And it's, people say, they say to me, oh, you teach theology of the body to teens? They must reject that. I'm like, no, they love it. Even if they're not going to sign up right away. They're like, wow, that's so beautiful. It's usually a girl, or 1 or 2 girls will come up and say to me, I never heard about sex like that. That's so beautiful. Right? The guys, the young men, they get that it's sacred. We talk about the sacredness of sex. There's some really cool ways to talk about it. They're like, yeah. They get it. Because men have insight into things. Women have intuition into people. But men understand the divine order better than women. Because men are called to institute where it is not and maintain the divine order. So anyway, I could tell you so many stories that would just fill your heart and blow your mind of people who have responded so well to hearing the truth, hearing church teaching, and converted and done all kinds of things with the hard teachings, the hard sayings. Okay. So, whoa. Battery laying low. That's okay, honey, because we're almost done. Oh, and you don't want to change them. Well, anyway, Theology of the Body Institute in Pennsylvania. You guys are so close. You're so blessed. You live so close by. Christopher West teaches there. You can be with him for a whole week. Head and Heart Immersion 1, 2, and 3. If you do 8 weeks with him, over time, you can be certified. I teach a Theology of the Body Basics 30-hour course online through sacredheartcollege.ca up in Peterborough, Ontario. Not Peterborough, New Hampshire. I saw there was one. Peterborough, Ontario. And it's just the basics. It does not replace the Theology of the Body Institute. It's just to familiarize you with the concepts, the language, which should become the lingua franca of the church. We should all be spouting out these terminologies, which are not fancy terminology, like language of the body. We should all know what that means. Spousal meaning of the body. The order of the gift, the law of the gift. God's 5 F's of true love, the 7 stages to true love, etc., etc. So thank you so much. God bless you, and let's pray for each other.